Hey soulmates, what's going on? Welcome back to talking about famous paintings. It looks like today we're going to be talking about Georges Seurat's most famous painting, A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte. I think that's how you pronounce it. My French is a little rusty, so I apologize if I'm not too good with my pronunciations. Well, let's talk about a little bit of Georges Seurat's history here. He's actually most famous as one of the creators of pointillism, along with his fellow painter Paul Signac. The two of them created pointillism together, or as they preferred to call it, or at least how Seurat preferred to call it, divisionism. But it's more or less the same thing. And what pointillism is a bunch of dots of paint, more or less, that are applied to the canvas so that the color mixes on the canvas instead of actually physically mixed by mixing paints together. The idea behind this was that using complementary colors and the color wheel, they could create color arrangements that were more intense than could be conventionally made by mixing paints physically on the palette. And if you look at some of their paintings, like Seurat's Bathers at Azanir, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a predecessor to his Sunday Afternoon painting. This one is far less pointillist than that one, though it still shares a lot of design similarities with it. You can see the progression of his work right there. He's beginning to use more and more dots. And then you can also see it on one of his other most famous paintings, The Circus, which is actually unfinished. And you can really see what it looks like as it's in progress. Even though it's unfinished, it still has that quality of his design work. Well, Seurat died around 1891, sometime in 1891, and he was only 31 years old. He was actually a pretty young guy. He was even younger than Van Gogh, who, or Van Gogh, depending how you want to pronounce his name. Van Gogh actually learned a little bit from Seurat and did his own version of pointillism over in his little world. He had a completely unique thing going on where he was using a lot more expression and a lot more movement. Whereas Seurat was far more scientific in the way that he would apply his design principles. The post-impressionists were of the mind that impressionism was very good as a movement for art, but it was too imprecise for their liking. And one of the reasons for that was that Impressionism's paintings tended to lose a sense of form because of the way that they would capture an impression of a work rather than exacting details. So we would get ideas of what the Impressionists were seeing, but sometimes the things that they would paint would appear very abstractly on the canvas. So when we look at a piece by Monet, we're getting an idea of what that work or what that place looks like, but his sense of form gets lost in all the loose application of paint. So when he's using his very painterly style, using thick brushstrokes to put down those ideas, we can tell what it is, but also we lose a sense of what it really looks like, if that makes sense. The point is that Impressionism was not a very exact way of painting, whereas Seurat and Signac, perhaps to a lesser degree Signac, sought a way to create painting that was a bit more exacting in its design. Well, let's take a look at the painting here, Sunday Afternoon at the Island of La Grande Jatte. If you look at the painting, it looks like well, it's very large. It looks like it's large because it is large. It looks like 81.7 inches by 121.25 inches, or 207.6 centimeters by 308 centimeters. It's a pretty big painting. And the funny thing is, I actually saw this piece in person over at the Art Institute of Chicago. And I have to say that when I saw it, I was kind of expecting it to be a little bigger. that was that was a bit of a shock to me. So just a little bit of an FYI there. It's still a big painting, don't get me wrong. I don't know why I didn't think it was when I first saw it. It's a little weird on my part. But anyway, it took Seurat a long time to paint this painting because, well, believe it or not, pointillism is a very meticulous way of painting because you're applying dots, dot, dot, dot. And if you've ever done it, it's quite a maddening technique. And you start to see why Van Gogh painted the way he did and why Signac was a little bit looser than Seurat was. Because Seurat's paintings are a vast arrangement of dots, vast arrangements of these little points. And they would take him so long that he took 2 years on and off to paint this painting a Sunday afternoon at the island of La Grande Jatte. He started with the landscape of the park first off, after he completed all of his preliminary drawings, and there were a great deal of preliminary drawings. If you look at some of his preliminary drawings, you can see that he did one study for where he had one person sitting on the grass, and he had very much a looser arrangement of dots than you would see later. And this feels much more like a sort of impressionist painting, the way that he's completing this work, even though you can see the obvious attempts at divisionism, but it's not very practical when trying to paint quickly. So it's just interesting to note that this curious arrangement of blues and greens and violets that he's got on this little canvas here. And then he's got another study where you can see an arrangement of people where he's trying to capture all these people in various positions so that he can insert them into his painting. He's capturing these studies, trying to get the feel for how he's going to paint them. And he's got one more here where he's trying to capture the landscape again. He's just painting the landscape over and over, getting a feel for it, trying to understand it. And again, it's a similar arrangement, although there's more darker middle greens in here than yellow greens this time around, because he's painting the shadows. It looks like he painted this particular picture at a different time of day. This study. It looks like through all the studies he's doing, he's trying to capture what he thinks is going to be the right picture. He's having trouble deciding, it seems, how he wants to paint this, but he just knows that he wants to paint this, and he feels that the island here is a good setting for his picture. It's that much obvious, but actually painting them is another matter. There's one study here where he finally gets the arrangement that he wants, and you can see some remnants of what becomes the final painting here. It's curious to see that progression, and after he does this study, he finally knows what he wants. And to look at the final painting here, it would seem that all of his studies paid off. This is what artists do. A lot of artists, at least, not all of them. I shouldn't paint with a broad brush here and say all artists do a lot of studies. Some of them don't. But Seurat completed all these studies to finally get the composition he wanted. And that's what a lot of artists do to really perfect the final product. And a lot of the best paintings come out this way. That's why you see so many studies in the collection of the artists where they look like incomplete little paintings, and they are incomplete little paintings. They weren't meant to be completed paintings to show off to everybody. They were just studies, and they're kind of just not really throwaway pieces, but just little bits of curiosities that are attached to the history of the painting. Seurat would sit in the park studying these people, studying the island, and he would draw these things and paint these things. It's kind of fascinating to think about what was going through his mind while he was trying to paint this, whether he was waiting for just the right time of day to get the light just right, or whether he was waiting for just the right arrangement of people. Because you can see these empty landscapes, and I don't think he was very pleased with the way that they were so empty. I wonder if one of the compositions that he painted, one of these little sketches that he did, oil sketches, is what finally turned out to be the painting, whether he captured their essence just the way he wanted one day, and he said, "Eureka, that's it," or whether it was more of a compilation of various pieces that came together. I don't know. Judging by all the drawings he did with all kinds of various people, I'd say he probably put them all together after the fact. The painting is curious to look at because well, the figures look oddly lifeless for going to the park here or going to this island where presumably they're supposed to be having fun. To look at the couple at the very rightmost of the painting where there appears to be a monkey on a leash, and I, I don't know what the significance of that is. That's a curious addition to this painting. They don't look like they're enjoying themselves. They look like it's a struggle to stay together. And the child over near that mother in the middle of the painting doesn't look like she's enjoying herself either. It looks like these people are miserable, like they're hoping for some kind of release at this location, but they're not they're not happy. They want better than they're getting in life, and they're looking for some way to find it, but this isn't it. There's a sense of sadness about the painting that way. You see a girl off in the background who's playing, and you see one couple who are kind of enjoying themselves, but the people in the foreground here, they don't look happy. I wonder if it's something of a some meaning behind the fact that they're draped in shadow this way. Whereas the people in sunlight, maybe not all of them, but some of them seem to be enjoying themselves. There's a woman fishing near the water there. Maybe she's searching for possibilities. And then there's sailboats off in the distance and more people staring out at the water. Another fellow back there and was waving his hands around. I can't tell what he's doing. Yes, the people in shadow seem listless. It's as though Seurat wanted to paint this picture with bright colors, but also a dash of cynicism. Perhaps he was unhappy with his own self when he began painting this, and he was trying to express two different sides of himself. There was the Seurat maybe that was happy, at least happier in the daytime, but in the night, well, maybe less so. Or maybe it wasn't a commentary on himself at all. Maybe it was just a commentary on how he saw French society. One group is so cold and the other group is so warm. I, I really do wonder about that monkey though. I can't make sense. I can't make any sense of why this woman has a monkey on a leash. What is I am unfamiliar with why that is a thing. Well, it's curious the way that he painted this picture, because if you look at the entirety of the picture here, there's a little bit of a border around it. Like he actually painted a border around this painting. And I can't remember if this is a frame that he actually attached to it, or whether it actually was painted on there. Okay, he added the colored borders to the edges of the composition, but do they necessarily serve a purpose in the final design? Does it look like it does anything for the painting? Well, yes and no, because when you look at many portions of this painting, it looks like he's using complementary colors to really clash against what he's painted here. You can see the red against the green over to the side at the bottom. It's a lot of red, and whenever you see a patch of orange, you see a patch of blue. You can see it on the man's pant leg over there with the orange highlight. He put a little bit of blue on the border there. And when you look at the top of the painting where you see more red and more blue on the border, yeah, he did a complete inverse all across the border here. And it looks as though it's not necessarily real defined that this is more of the same composition, but it does look like he intended it for it to be more of the same composition. It's just so indistinct that it's hard to make out. Of course, the border is not really the focus of the painting here. It's actually hard to say what the definitive focus is, but if I had to pick one, I would probably say it's probably the couple at the right, at the very most, yeah, the very rightmost foreground part here. The couple draped in shadow here with the monkey on a leash. it, it makes me smile to look at that. When he started painting this, he started the painting off with very dull, basic materials like every painter uses: earth colors, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and everything like that. But later on, he decided to use entirely bright colors like the Impressionists would. Now, the Impressionists would still use earth colors here and there, but some painters like Monet had completely abandoned earth colors for a brighter palette somewhere later in their career. And you can see that here with Seurat here. He completely abandoned earth colors for brighter colors. He used vermilion as his red, and he used cobalt blue as his blue, and then he used zinc yellow as his yellow, and emerald green as his green, with perhaps mixed results because emerald green is known to be very fugitive, and it reacts with cadmium yellow, but he did not use cadmium yellow on this painting, I don't think. He used the zinc yellow, which is more of a lemony type hue to it. Unfortunately, the zinc yellow that he used degraded over time, and so a lot of the yellows in the painting have turned brown since he painted it, and it started happening in his lifetime. Now, I'm not certain if the painting has been touched up or not. I assume it probably has, because the painting looks like it's still very bright in all the areas where you would expect to see the zinc yellow. So I think that the painting has been touched up with regards to the zinc yellow. Now, I have no idea what they would have used to recreate that. Maybe they actually found that new pigment, zinc yellow. Well, not new pigment, it's actually very old now, but at the time it was new, and that's why Seurat used it with catastrophic effects, disappointingly so. But thankfully, some conservationists were able to recover how the painting was supposed to look by using digital imagery, and they figured out that the painting is supposed to be, oh so bright because of the presence of the zinc yellow pigment that is on the painting. Well, how do I feel about Seurat's painting here personally? Um, I I like the painting. It's not my favorite painting. It's kind of all over the place compositionally. I feel like it's a little cluttered, but I'm not gonna harp on that too much. I think that it's still a good painting. It's just when I look at it, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be looking, and sometimes I wonder what the point of the painting is. Now, I just chalk it up to me not really understanding what he's trying to drive at here, but I make my own conjectures and think that maybe he's trying to make some sort of comment about himself. I think it's hard for me to really fall in love with the painting because there's a coldness about it that I find eerie. The way that these people just seem to be so robotic and stiff. His rendering of forms is not as loose as his fellow pointillist Paul Signac, who would paint forms with a much warmer presence and more natural flow. These people look robotic like there's a shade of maybe some kind of cubism or something about it. I don't know if cubism is the right word for it, but one of the movements of the early 20th century is what the vibe I get here. Something very stiff and unemotional. But I also think that's probably the point here that he's driving at, is that maybe French society was very stiff and unemotional, and he didn't like that. And maybe he felt that they needed to loosen up a little bit. Maybe that's the idea here. They're having a Sunday afternoon at this wonderful island, and they look like they're all miserable. And how can you be so miserable at a time like this? One of my big takeaways here is that I love the color on it, even though I know the color is somewhat discolored over time to the point where the yellows are very, very off. And I wonder if it has been restored or whether it is the way it is and they just kind of left it. I'm kind of hoping it's been restored, although there's part of me that wonders, someone else painting on the canvas? I don't know about that, but you kind of have to figure that they probably do that all the time, and it's just something you're probably going to have to do anyway because this is an oil painting. And the thing about oil paintings is that even though they have a high repute and they enjoy a lot of respect, they still have problems with permanence because they tend to crack over time and, well, they're not the most permanent medium. If you want a really permanent medium, you really need to go with something like acrylic or watercolor. But watercolor was not the most popular thing then. And really neither acrylic wasn't even a thing yet. So most of these artists would use either oil or watercolor. And they would use watercolor for sketches and stuff, and oil for their more quote-unquote serious work. Well, those are my thoughts about a Sunday afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte. I'm not in love with the painting, but I respect the painting, and I do like some elements of it. I'm not the biggest fan of Seurat's work. I respect his work, and I respect what he's done, but his technique feels so cold and mathematical to me that it's hard to get into. I like his friend in the pointilist movement or the post-impressionist. Post-impressionist can mean a lot of things, so I should probably just say pointilist or divisionist. I like Paul Signac's work better. It feels more approachable. This I feel like I have to look at from a distance, and it feels difficult to form any kind of bond with. Maybe that speaks a volume about the way I am, and maybe that's why it's hard for me to interact with it, because I feel some kind of difficulty really empathizing or sympathizing with this painting, because I don't share maybe some of Seurat's views. I don't know. I can't say it's something I've really thought about before now, but maybe. Anyway, guys, I really hope that you enjoy this little look at not Paul, Paul. His name is Georges Seurat's A Sunday Afternoon at La Grande Jatte. Let me know what you think of the painting down in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. And until then, I'll be back soon with a look at Henri Matisse's. I'm having a hard time with these French pronunciations. Henri Matisse's Woman with a Hat. We'll take a look at that painting, and then I think we'll be doing something probably with. I have to decide what I want to do next. Maybe we'll look at a Picasso or something. If you have any suggestions, of course, throw them down in the comments section too, and I'll take a look. Anyway, if you like this, give it a like. If you support what I do, subscribe today, because I'd love to have you. Till next time, with love from me to you. Bye.